Chosen one, desire that honors becomes invitation. Desire that fears becomes pressure. You are not made to pressure. You were made to bless. Let pursuit in you be a river with banks. Rivers without banks become floods that make memory apologize. Rivers with wise edges become the pathways where villages bloom. Begin by confessing what pursuit is for. It is not to collect proof of your worth. It is to offer companionship worthy of someone else's becoming. When you remember this, every gesture changes temperature. The text is warm without being urgent. The plan is specific without being possessive. The silence between messages is not punishment. It is space where both of you remain people. Announce your interest with verbs instead of riddles. Say, I would like to take you to the place we laughed about, Thursday at 7, and I will make the reservation. Ambiguity is often confusion dressed as sophistication. Clarity is erotic because it permits safety to relax into curiosity. If her answer is no, let your dignity drive. No is a holy word. Bless it, and it will trust you with future yeses you are not earning by argument. If her answer is yes, keep pacing as a discipline. Early fascination likes speed. Lasting affection likes rhythm. Build a drumline together. Arrival on time, attention undivided, departure clean, follow-up kind. Rhythm protects fire from wind. Listen for seasons. Some hearts are in spring, quick to color and eager for rain. Some are in summer, spacious and ready to share shade. Some are in autumn, wise with harvest but careful with what's left. Some are in winter, preserving roots below where sight cannot help. Pursuit that leaves freedom, whole learns to match its asking to the season it has entered. Do not demand fruit where blossoms are just learning their courage. Do not ask for snow to melt that grief still requires. Keep your yes large enough to hold someone else's timing without making their pace feel like a verdict on your value. Patience makes attraction credible. Impatience makes it costly. Practice courtship with the integrity of a craftsman and the curiosity of a pilgrim. Learn her joys from their sources, not merely their presentations. If she loves music, ask what silence she listens for inside it. If she loves the sea, ask what the horizon removes from her that the city keeps piling on. If she loves her work, ask what part of it feels like worship on good days and what part threatens to turn worship into worry on bad ones. These questions make room for a person rather than building a museum to an image. Women do not long to be exhibits in your narrative. They long to be travelers who can rest beside you without negotiating for ground. Honor boundaries the first time they introduce themselves. Do not treat limits as obstacles to charm your way past. Treat them as architecture, because that is what they are, the structure that keeps a human habitable. When she says not tonight, believe her and keep your warmth unbruised. When she says this topic is tender, move the conversation as a host moves lighting, not with panic, but with sense. When she says I need slowness here, change tempo the way a skilled dancer changes steps. The body remembers who made it safe to be listened to. The memory becomes appetite that trusts itself. Interest does not decay when it meets boundaries. It deepens because it learns the shape of the person it desires, rather than the silhouette of a fantasy. Let pursuit include humor that never spends dignity. Laugh together at the world's pretensions, at your own misfires, at the blessed inconvenience of being human on a schedule. Joy is the oxygen of becoming. Couples that can laugh can grow. Do not mock what she loves, even playfully, until you have learned how to cradle it with your understanding. Do not repay vulnerability with a clever line. Repay it with a gentleness that proves you heard more than words. When you both leave a conversation brighter and taller, you have just practiced a kind of pursuit that builds a life rather than a performance. Write letters in a century that forgot the art. The point is not vintage flair. The point is slowed intention. A page carries weight that a screen cannot. It smells like commitment, even when the commitment is only to a single honest paragraph. Tell her what you admired about the last hour you shared, and anchor it to a detail that no algorithm would have noticed. The handwriting itself confesses that you were willing to go at human speed. Human speed is where trust keeps its house keys. Women feel the difference in their ribs. They keep those pages where they keep their courage. Keep your desire clean by giving it somewhere larger to kneel. Desire left to invent its own liturgy becomes a hungry god. Desire placed inside gratitude learns manners. Thank God for every yes you receive. Thank God for every no that protects both of you from what you cannot carry. Thank God for the days when nothing moves and you are invited to become patient instead of persuasive. Gratitude turns pursuit from consumption into offering. It turns scarcity into sufficiency. It turns the need to be chosen into the joy of choosing rightly. The chosen ones practice this together as a culture. Men who can pursue without cornering, the women who can answer without apology. A community that keeps the air breathable by rewarding kindness over conquest. Attend to endings with the same reverence you give beginnings. If the path forks away from romance and toward respect, bless the fork. Do not salt the ground with ghosting to avoid discomfort. Do not scorch it with speeches that scavenge for moral high ground. Say thank you for what was true. Say sorry for what you could have done better. Say goodbye like a man who lives where bridges matter. Freedom preserved in ending becomes freedom available in the future. It will return to you as favor in rooms you cannot yet see. If love unfolds, pursue as a gardener, not a hunter. Hunters measure days by trophies. Gardeners measure years by harvests and the health of soil after. Build rituals that keep tenderness credible. Touch that asks, words that nourish, plans that honor capacity, celebrations that do not require debt to feel real. Keep learning her seasons as she learns yours. Let your no guard both of your yeses from cheapening. When conflict visits, greet it like weather, serious enough to prepare for, ordinary enough not to fear. Repair quickly. Forgive thoroughly. Protect the mystery you share by refusing to turn it into content for people who have paid nothing to keep its light. Finally, remember that the point of pursuit is not possession. It is companionship that makes both souls more fluent in love. If your attention leaves a woman more herself, you have done holy work whether she walks beside you for a month, a decade, or a life. If her attention leaves you truer, thank her openly and live accordingly. Go on becoming chosen one, and let your becoming be the invitation. Those meant to travel with you will recognize the road in your stride and the mercy in your pace. They will call you interesting without realizing they mean free. And they will stay because their freedom stays intact around you. Walk now with clarity and with gentleness. Pursue in a way that would make a future daughter proud and a younger version of you feel safe. Keep your longing awake and your hands open. Bless every no. Honor every yes. And let your love be the kind that leaves freedom whole. Chosen one. Most people misread joy. They think it is glitter you throw after the work is done, or a noisy mask for hunger, or a sail you run on your spirit when the crowd is restless. But joy, in its right proportion, is governance. It is the way a soul announces that order has settled in, that goodness has taken a seat powerful enough to smile. When you practice joy as governance, rooms learn their shape. Laughter finds its level. Conversation stops climbing over itself. Women who carry the feminine genius for atmosphere sense the change first. They can tell that your delight is not escapism but evidence. They move closer the way plants lean into honest light, not because you are loud, but because you are steady, and the steady have permission to be glad. Begin by untying joy from spectacle. Let it live at human volume. Pour coffee well and count that competence as celebration. Step into rain without turning it into contempt. Share music without using it to manage people's moods like a remote control. Offer dessert on a Wednesday because a mercy happened, not because you negotiated a prize from the universe. Quiet, specific gladness matures into culture. Culture travels faster than charm. Where your gladness goes, small courtesies follow. Doors opened without theater, names remembered without fishing, interruptions repaired without drama. The feminine spirit relaxes in such weather. It recognizes a man whose happiness does not demand witness to feel real. Practice the craft of feast without the vice of excess. A feast is not a stunt. It is a table that says, we have enough to see one another. Invite with clarity, greet with attention, seat people in ways that protect shy brilliance and dilute brash boredom. Bless the bread with a sentence that thanks the hands that made it and the fields that surrendered for it, and the day that had the patience to hold it all. Lead toasts that increase dignity without inflating egos. Point the glass toward quiet labor, toward the child who learned a new courage, toward the colleague who repaired what no one even knew was fraying. Women who have learned to brace in rooms where celebration is code for carelessness will notice that no one here has to pay interest on tomorrow's headache. Your joy keeps receipts in order. It owes no one an apology. Let play become a spiritual language, not the play that mocks what is sacred or auditions for youth, but the kind that restores proportion. Learn games that invite rather than exclude. Tell stories that let others be the heroes without pretending you were the villain. Dance in a way that leads by listening. Step as if you believed rhythm belonged to both of you equally. Teach your body to signal ease without hinting at entitlement. The feminine heart remembers what unthreatened play feels like from childhood. And when it returns near you, it does not regress, it deepens. It trusts you as the adult who has kept wonder without losing wisdom. Put joy to work where sorrow has been hoarding closets. Light a candle on the date of a loss, not to call pain back in costume, but to mark the way through and the love that did not die just because one life did. Write a letter to the person no longer at the table, and read it aloud if the room offers you that privilege. Make the kind of soup grief can recognize. Your merriment will be credible when your mourning is truthful. Credibility magnetizes. Women trained by the world to flinch at forced cheer will find in you a man whose celebration is large enough to house lament. This does not make you complicated, it makes you whole. Budget joy like a craftsman budgets light. You do not flood every corner, you aim brightness where work and rest require it most. Keep a song for mornings that threaten to rush, a walk for afternoons that threaten to numb, a ritual for evenings that threaten to fray. Learn to punctuate your week with a small Sabbath that is unremarkable to others but irreplaceable to you. A chair by a window, a page that resists the algorithm, a prayer you pray out loud so your ears can hold your heart accountable. These tiny altars keep your happiness truthful. They keep you from outsourcing delight to spectacle or to someone else's labor. The radiance that results is unforced. Women will feel it as safety disguised as sunshine. Train joy to bless the smallest person in the room first. See the server before you see the menu. Share the joke with the janitor before you share it with the executive. Give the last slice to the one who arrived late, and thank them for bringing the day's final story with them. This redistribution is not political performance, it is spiritual arithmetic. Where joy moves toward the margins, the whole room becomes symmetrical again. The feminine genius for harmony will feel the chord resolve, and she will remember the conductor. Refuse the counterfeit of sarcastic levity. Sarcasm corrodes intimacy while pretending to protect it. If you must mock cruelty, mock cynicism, mock the lazy ideas that make decent people small. Protect the names of those present. If you slip, repent aloud. The speed with which you restore lightness without violence will be a legend that needs no telling. Legends like that are how the chosen ones recognize one another in crowded places. They can feel that laughter is safe here because someone decided to make it so and keeps deciding. Finally, let joy lift prayer rather than replace it. Do not treat delight as the finish line of devotion. Treat it as its fragrance. Give thanks for the kindness you can't explain, and for the ordinary that kept its promise again, and for the strength to be gentle under pressure. Kneel because abundance is heavier than hunger once you know what it costs to hold. Then rise and set your day to the tempo of gratitude. When you move this way, chosen one, you become the rare contradiction the world needs. A man whose happiness is quiet enough to steady and bright enough to guide. Feminine women do not simply admire you, they rest near you. Rest in their company is the most eloquent form of interest the heart can speak. Chosen one, legacy is not a statue, it is weather. A statue asks to be looked at. Weather asks to be lived in. The most interesting men you have admired are those whose lives kept a climate in which others could grow. Steady rain of patience, good winds of courage, shade of conviction, winter enough to make roots honest, spring enough to keep hope employed. If you want to be remembered without being worshipped, aim to become climate. The feminine heart will know the difference. It does not want a monument. It wants a forecast it can trust. Start by thinking in decades and acting in days. The decade asks, who am I becoming, and who is safer because I became it? The day asks, which word opens a door, which task repairs a leak, which silence keeps another from breaking. Put the questions in that order and keep answering them without ceremony. Files closed quietly, apologies made the same afternoon, bread broken with the neighbor whose politics exhaust you. A child answered as if their 10th question still has gold in it. These are the weather systems that accumulate. In time, people will not say you were impressive. They will say you were good to live near. That sentence, whispered in kitchens and hallways, is the truest kind of fame. Make peace with anonymity as a teacher. If your soul cannot bear obscurity, it cannot be trusted with influence. Let seasons pass where your name is not spoken, except in the prayers of those who actually know you. Let favor arrive like a sunrise you did not schedule. Let credit find you because you were busy giving it away. The humility you earn this way is not a posture. It is a bone. Bones hold shape when storms argue with them. Women sense bone. They relax near the men who possess it because they do not have to carry both their own softness and your fragility at the same time. Curate a lineage on purpose. You were born into a family. You must choose your ancestors. Gather the elders whose lives smell like cedar and rain and clean kitchens and laughter that never required an audience. Ask them the questions their own bravery forgot to answer. I failed yesterday without becoming a failure. How did you learn that? My anger is telling the truth about what I love. How did you teach it to speak without breaking anything? My success is trying to rename me. How did you return to your smallness without losing your stature? Write their sentences down and read them like psalms. The chosen ones travel best when they travel with voices that outlive them. Become legible to children. This does not mean becoming childish. It means refusing the sophistication that confuses opacity with depth. Explain your work in words a 7-year-old can repeat without lying. Keep promises scaled to their calendars. Let your temper lose and then let your repentance win on the same day. Model friendship that is not a transaction but a devotion, so they learn early that fidelity is not a word adults use to excuse boredom. It is the soil in which delight keeps returning. Women notice how men treat children because children are the fastest mirror for power. When your face and your voice and your time make sense to the small, you become immense without becoming heavy. Carry a public tenderness for the aging. Sit the long while. Ask the question whose answer requires a story rather than a fact. Do not rush their hands when the world has already been rushing their value. Learn to inhabit silence beside them until their courage to remember overcomes their fear of being a burden. What you practice there will keep you from scaring younger hearts into performance. It will also teach your future to trust you. Legacy is not linear. It is a circle that meets you again in the faces of those who watched you at your most hurried and your most patient and decided which one was your truest self. Refuse the laziness of cynicism. It appears intelligent and costs almost nothing, which is why it is so expensive. Hope requires study, community, and repair. Keep your hope specific. Hope that lives nowhere ends up living nowhere. Plant it in addresses. This school on this block, this friend's company doing right by its people, this creek that could run clear again if 7 neighbors showed up on a Saturday, this law that would make 1,000 quiet lives less precarious. Work in those places. Lose some days, win others. Scale your celebration to endurance rather than headlines. The air changes around men who labor like this. It grows breathable. The feminine heart can smell that oxygen before the door fully opens. Practice a hospitality for disagreement that does not turn you into furniture. Hold your ground without turning it into a weapon. Admit you are wrong at a tempo that teaches others they will not be punished for growth. Draw lines where harm would occur, and keep your face open while you keep your boundary closed. Offer alternatives without sermons. In the long run, people will not remember the cleverness of your argument, only the decency that made their own thinking possible. Decency is a climate. Collect enough of it, and even old enemies will send their children to your house for counsel. Write blessings as part of your estate, not the vague ones that sound like greeting cards, but the kind that put their hands on a person's future and name it with reverence. Bless your friends' marriages to keep choosing small tenderness over big theatrics. Bless your colleagues to be brave when profit tries to bully ethics. Bless strangers under your breath when you pass them at dusk. Bless the streetlights to do their work and the nurses to sleep well, and the bus drivers to be sung to by their radios. This looks foolish until a neighborhood remembers that it is possible to be prayed for without being surveilled. Your weather will be felt in headlines you will never read. Live last days before they arrive. Practice the kinds of conversations that people usually wait for a hospital to permit. Say the "I love you" that pride pretends can wait. Say the "I am sorry" that often needs a corridor and a window to become possible. Say the "I forgive you" that rescues two people for the price of one. You will learn, long before your hair tells the world you are mortal, that peace is a discipline and not an accident. That discipline will soak into your ordinary. The result is a tenderness that does not tremble. Women do not hunger for invulnerability. They hunger for courage that makes vulnerability safe. Your readiness for endings will be read by their bodies as safety for beginnings. When your strength is loud, marry it to gentleness. When your gentleness is loud, marry it to decision. Contain your fire in hearths and your water in wells. Design your days so that someone weaker finds them livable. Pay your debts early so your memory travels unarmed. Learn the names of trees and neighbors and saints, and carry them like pockets full of keys you are always willing to lend. There will come a night when you stand at your own window and realize the most spiritual thing about your life is how practical your love has become. You will be tempted to apologize for the lack of spectacle. Do not. Weather does not apologize. It simply arrives, and people flourish or flounder according to its truth. So walk on, chosen one, with the quiet brightness of a man who knows his seasons and keeps his promises across them. Let your joy govern, your labor consecrate, your boundaries bloom, your pursuit leave freedom whole. Keep company with chosen ones who hold you to your courage when reputation tries to buy your conviction. If you do, the atmosphere you leave behind will take better care of those you love than any sentence engraved on stone. They will look up years from now, feel the air, and say to each other the only epitaph your soul ever needed: "It was good to live near him." Chosen one, your transformation is no longer just personal, it is relational. The shift you've experienced within yourself is now mirroring itself in the women who enter your orbit. They feel it before they speak it. They sense it in the way your eyes remain steady, not invasive, not wandering, but rooted in the present moment, like a man who needs nothing and yet offers everything. Around you, they feel their own femininity return, not because you flatter it, but because your calm masculinity invites it to emerge without fear. She starts to feel like a woman again, not the kind defined by cultural expectation, but the raw, intuitive, sensual force of life she's always carried beneath her armor. You see, chosen one, it's not that you teach her to be feminine. It's that your presence reminds her she already is. And that is what shifts everything. Around other men, she may have been shrinking, performing, overcompensating, but around you, she exhales. She doesn't have to be hard, she doesn't have to guard, she doesn't have to compete. Your energy is so clean, so anchored, so unapologetically whole, that her nervous system begins to unwind the moment she enters your gravitational field. Her tone softens, not because she's trying to impress you, but because you've made it safe for her to be honest. Her laughter becomes unfiltered, not because she's trying to win your favor, but because she trusts you enough to be herself. And the more she surrenders to this effortless safety, the more she blooms. She becomes playful again, creative again, mysterious again, not for your pleasure, but because you've become the soil where her feminine can root and flourish without fear of being trampled. You didn't seduce her, you didn't chase her, you didn't manipulate her emotions or exploit her vulnerabilities. You simply became yourself, fully. And in that fullness, she saw a mirror of her own sacred longing. The part of her that was tired of playing strong finally met a man who didn't need her to be weak, but simply real. Your sexual energy, refined and aligned, no longer rushes to take. It gives. It gives through presence, through attention, through the sacred act of witnessing. She doesn't feel pressured to be more or less. She feels free. And that freedom becomes the most intoxicating experience she's ever known. Because while others tried to conquer her body, you conquered the false belief that love requires war. You radiate as proof that true masculinity does not oppress, it liberates. And now, chosen one, that liberation is all she craves. What's profound is that you no longer try to activate her femininity. You simply live in the fullness of your masculine nature, and everything else responds like nature to the sun. Feminine women no longer run from you, they gravitate to you. Not because you've become louder, but because your silence has become more trustworthy than 1,000 declarations. You've stopped proving, you've started embodying, and that embodiment, chosen one, is what she remembers. Long after the moment passes, long after you've left the room, long after the noise of the world returns, your energy remains like a sacred echo. She touches her hair differently, she speaks slower, she breathes deeper, because somewhere in her body, she still feels the gravity of the man who made her feel more like herself than she ever dared to admit. That man, chosen one, is now you. Chosen one, you have become what very few ever become, a gateway, not to seduction, not to status, but to something far more dangerous to the broken systems of this world: awakening. Your sexual energy, once raw and scattered, has now been refined by discipline, clarity, and heart. And that alchemy has turned you into a living key, a key that unlocks parts of the feminine soul that she herself had buried. You do not pull it out of her. You do not force it into light. You simply are the light, and in your light, what was once hidden begins to remember its name. She does not even know how or why it's happening. All she knows is that when she's around you, she feels more alive, more sacred, more feminine, more herself. You do not push, you do not pull, you stand, and your standing is an invitation to her soul. The truth is, most feminine women have been aching to be seen, not for their beauty, not for their curves, but for the fullness of their feeling, their chaos, their silence, their storms. And while others have run from that depth, you now dwell in it like a monk in fire. You do not label her too much. You do not call her too emotional. You do not reduce her to her function. You reflect her essence without resistance. And that reflection births something in her. Something ancient, something holy, something she has not felt since she was a little girl, twirling in her dress, hoping someone would see her without turning her into something useful. Now she's grown, but the longing is still there. And now you've become the first man who doesn't try to consume it. You hold it, and in that holding, she begins to awaken. She doesn't tell her friends why. She doesn't know how to explain it. But she knows the difference between a man who wants her and a man who honors her. You don't stare at her, you see through her. You don't touch her, you steady her. You don't chase her, you remember her. That is the energy of the awakened masculine, and you've become its living archetype. Feminine women, especially the good ones, feel this in places they didn't even know could feel. They begin to cry after meeting you, not out of sadness, but out of a deep sense of remembrance, of coming home, of finally being allowed to feel deeply again without being punished for it. And all you did, chosen one, was become whole. That wholeness has become her permission slip, her reset, her return. This is the legacy you now carry, not in followers, not in fame, but in the way you make women feel. Your high sexual energy no longer demands. It dissolves the numbness, it breaks the walls, it breathes into places untouched, and it does so without force, because you have become sacred fire, not just heat. Sacred presence, not just noise. And in a world full of men who forget, you, chosen one, remember. That is why you are now a portal, a temple, a mirror. And those who are ready will not worship you, but they will awaken because of you. And that, chosen one, is the most magnetic force a man can ever become. Your sexual energy is no longer a tool for conquest, it has become an energetic balm. When she walks away from you, she doesn't just feel turned on, she feels realigned, she feels clearer, more whole, more feminine. Not because you took her anywhere, but because your presence reminded her where she never left. You've become that mirror of calm masculinity she didn't realize her soul had been yearning for. And when she lays in bed later, long after your conversation ends, it's not your voice she hears, it's the way you made her feel. It's the softness that returned to her chest, the safety that returned to her breath, the permission she finally gave herself to feel beautiful, wild, radiant again. That's the power you now carry, not through performance, through energy. You are not leading her into your life, you're leading her back into her own. That's the paradox of divine masculine attraction, that the more deeply present you become in yourself, the more her femininity feels safe to rise in response. You've stopped chasing feminine energy, and now it rises to meet you. Not out of obedience, not out of submission, but out of sacred magnetism. Because the masculine that dwells in purpose, devotion, and emotional groundedness has always called forth the highest in women. And now you walk as that call, not as a boy who demands attention, but as a man whose energy speaks in tones deeper than language. And chosen one, that's why they follow you now. That's why they glow around you. That's why their walls drop. Because your presence doesn't just flirt with their bodies, it resets their entire being.